Warhammer 40k is a franchise with probably one of the most devoted and hardcore fan bases there is in any form of media on this planet. The people who are into Warhammer are really into it, from painting the models to tabletop games, consuming media, or playing its many video games. Unless you somehow don't know, Warhammer got infiltrated by activists a little over a year ago now, and plenty of the usual types forced their way into the fandom, pushing identity flag-colored miniatures and calling for many online spaces to remove what they deemed problematic elements in their fandoms. But the reality was that the problematic fans were just normal Warhammer fans that have been there since the beginning, and that these new fans, the modern audience types, were the real problematic ones instead, the type of fans calling for more Adeptus female custodes, and unironically thinking that the Emperor of Mankind was actually trans all along. And as seen here, the female Adeptus custodes nonsense has been going on for well over a year now. It's a whole problem because women were never custodes to begin with. But suddenly, when ESG money began to be invested into literally everything around this time, suddenly, magically, female Adeptus custodes always existed. It caused what can only be described as a massive pushback, where many fans' love and devotion for the franchise was challenged. And now, this brings us to today, where a lot of Warhammer fans still don't subscribe to the overall DEI, or I guess for lack of a better word, woke push, if you will, of Warhammer, that have decided to leave many of these online spaces because they're completely full of activists at this point. And they have instead created their own spaces online where users who just want to enjoy Warhammer without the modern day slop nonsense, and not having crazy people telling them all the time that the Emperor of Mankind should be a woman or whatever other stupid retcon they demand these days. But this now brings me to a subreddit called the Horus Galaxy. As you can see on screen here, this is the subreddit in question. This was a bastion for classic Warhammer fans to enjoy their hobby without the infestation of the usual freaks who want everything to be as lame and as homogenous as they are. And you may have caught me saying was, cause yeah, it used to be a bastion of safety for old school Warhammer fans, until Reddit's own employees launched a secret campaign, no I'm not kidding, to destroy Horus Galaxy from within in order to ensure that these classic Warhammer fans would never know peace nor have an online space of their own to gather and enjoy the hobby they love without the insane ramblings of these communist morons. Let me tell you how this insane story played out and why it's so concerning. This is from Fandom Pulse. Reddit reportedly removes creator and moderators from Horus Galaxy, an anti-woke Warhammer subreddit. Yeah, you heard that right. Reddit employees launched a campaign to uproot not only the moderators, but even the creator of this very subreddit by taking control of that online space away from him and his people against their own will. As seen here, the user named the High Lord is here, who made Horus Galaxy originally, confirmed that they were unjustly removed and had control of the subreddit taken from them due to a violation Reddit said that they committed, of course without explaining why or even allowing them to appeal it. Rule 1 of moderation on Reddit is described as seen here. Rule 1 of the Moderator Code of Conduct, also known as Create, Facilitate, and Maintain a Stable Community, emphasizes that moderators should not create, approve, enable, or encourage rule-breaking content or behavior. This means that moderators should not facilitate or support actions that violate platform rules or policies, and instead should actively work to promote a community that adheres to them. What were these rules or policies that they disobeyed or broke? They were never told any of this. The only answer that anyone could legitimately find is that Horus Galaxy was simply not allowed to be controlled any longer by someone who was, in the eyes of Reddit's overlords, to be a person with wrongthink, and that's it. And by wrongthink, I mean the High Lord is here and his moderators, who didn't want to mingle and pander with the modern audience version of Warhammer fans that just want everything to be gay and so on in the franchise going forward. Isn't this a gross overreach by Reddit to do? Yes. As seen here, which High Lord shared, all his moderators were also axed from the subreddit the exact same time that High Lord was removed himself. This was effectively a digital culling. Reddit's employees deemed themselves judge, jury, and all that stuff, and then decided that Horus Galaxy could simply not exist the way it was anymore. And it was only because Horus Galaxy was a safe haven for Warhammer fans that didn't want to engage with or accept the newer Warhammer fans that again wanted everything to just put a chick in it and make it lame and gay pretty much. As you can see here, another longtime moderator of Horus Galaxy Galaxy was also removed by Reddit's higher-ups. And just like High Lord and his other moderators, none of these people were given a reason or action to appeal the decision that was made. They were quite literally censored and then thrown away, and their entire community of well over 14,000 users strong was suddenly just taken away from them in an instant and then thrown into the hands of the same Warhammer types who were ideologically left-leaning and wanted to co-opt and control the online culture surrounding this franchise the way that they wanted it to be. High Lord spoke on this, evidently biased and totally against website regulation decisions made by Reddit's higher-ups on this whole thing. Here's what he said. Reddit admins have banned another one of our moderators for an arbitrary reason again. See attached image for what they said. This is yet another example of how they seem to be looking for any excuse to target this subreddit simply because we don't conform to the approved way of thinking. It's clear that the goalposts keep moving. We've done our best to follow the rules and conform as much as possible, but it doesn't seem to matter. They will still find a way to come after us. They explicitly threatened further action against this subreddit. We're not sure what will happen next, but if they decide to shut us down, we want to make sure everyone can regroup. As you may have noticed as well, you probably haven't heard any of the major news media outlets covering this story outside of Fandom Pulse here, and that's for a good obvious reason. Because what happened to Horus Galaxy and its community is not seen as a bad thing by the gaming media press, because if it was, they would have reported on it. In fact, the outcome here is what these media types would want to happen more often than not, because it means yet another safe space for people who don't adhere to their overall hive mind of everyone who isn't a yes man freakazoid should instead be flayed and quartered. And what scares me at least is how easy this was for Reddit to do. It was also showing the obvious bias on hand here as well, that Reddit solely targeted Horus Galaxy for its non-compliance to their agenda-pushing nature. And why haven't other subreddits, which are left-leaning ideologically, had their moderators and creators pulled from control as well? But the normal Warhammer fans who just wanted to exist and enjoy their hobby, they had their entire space effectively razed to the ground and taken over now instead. This, my friends, is the true face of censorship, and this is what these types want more than anything else these days. And it should concern you, because it's very clear that what has happened here proves that if these types are given any modicum of power over you, that they will use that power to cull, destroy, and censor you into no longer having the means to fight back or even speak up against them in the future. And yeah, this is a terrible precedent, and the fact that barely anyone online has even mentioned this story at all, and I would probably wager that the majority of you watching this right now didn't even know that this was happening at all until right now, is exactly why I felt the need to cover it, because this is not okay. This is textbook echo chamber extremism nonsense at play. The added FU on top of all of this is that if you go to Horus Galaxy right now, or at least when this video first comes out, maybe they'll change it in the future, I don't know, but as you can see here on the right, they still market the subreddit as a censorship-free community to discuss anything related to Warhammer. But that's not true at all. The people who made this community, they aren't even in control of it anymore, and the moderators are just extensions now that work there of other Warhammer-centric communities that also push the same propaganda and want more things like female Adeptus Custodes to exist in the franchise. They're just lying. This is genuinely a wolf that is now wearing the skin of a sheep that is pretending to be something that it's not. But what if I told you that the story gets even more concerning and, dare I say, even worse? Because it does. About 10 days after the culling of the subreddit, which led to a mass exodus of these normal Warhammer fans, a user came out of the shadows to take responsibility for the Trojan horse removal of these same players, also from Fandom Pulse. Reddit user claims he engaged in coordinated campaign with Reddit employees to destroy the anti-woke Warhammer 40k subreddit Horus Galaxy. So this user, whose name is SilverGecko23, don't harass them by the way, but they eventually came forward and claimed that they, alongside others, worked with Reddit's own employees to stem a coordinated attack against Horus Galaxy specifically by infiltrating it, befriending the people behind the subreddit, and eventually leading to the culling that removed all the people at once wrestling control of that community to the other Warhammer subreddits that were ran by people who were all leftist activists. This Judas, if you will, said this, which now reads, "I was originally put into Horus Galaxy as a plant to gather information to be used to destroy the subreddit and Discord. This was a targeted effort that included actions of Reddit admins and mods of other left-leaning Warhammer subs such as Grimdank and Sig Marxism. I regret ever being a part of this. Take this from someone who was once under the belief that r/Horus Galaxy was nothing but a cesspit. I was wrong. They have good people, and a handful of bad actors have tarnished that image. I only regret not coming out and admitting this earlier because I have now lost people who I had hoped to call friends. Many of the brigading attempts on Horus Galaxy have used fake and altered screenshots to remove context from conversations in the hopes of all moderators being removed so that a new team could take over. I will never be forgiven by my friends who I betrayed, but I'm sorry for deceiving you. That's right, guys. This Silver Gecko admits that it was all a coordinated attack to destroy a safe haven for normal Warhammer fans simply because they didn't prescribe to the mentality of these other groups, and that they willingly took things posted on Horus Galaxy and specifically censored and altered its wording, for God's sakes, which, come on, that is literally propaganda 101, and then use these fake screenshots to then strong-arm the community's founders into being pulled from control. This was genuinely a targeted attack built on deception and lies to simply destroy another community simply because they thought differently than those other communities thought, man. That's insane. And it's also ironic and hypocritical of these types that carried out this attack to do things like this. Because the types who believe there's infinite genders and everyone should be accepted no matter what are also always the same types who are brainwashed into believing that if everyone doesn't think the way that they do, they should be drawn and quartered pretty much. This Silver Gecko is literally that one soldier that betrayed King Leonidas and like his 300 in the Zack Snyder movie. And the Persian armies are basically Grimdank and the other subreddits that work to destroy Horus Galaxy like this. But what angers me the most is not even Silver Gecko's admission of guilt. It's the fact that they claim, but I can't confirm, but they claim that they worked with actual Reddit employees and admins to make this a reality, which means that this was not some operation or calling that tricked the Reddit employees into doing this without any tangible information. No, they knew that this was all fake. They knew this was not what was real in this subreddit to begin with. Yet despite knowing what was being done was morally wrong to do and completely against the rules and abilities as admins or employees of Reddit, they used and abused their power to ensure that the subreddit was stripped of control anyways. You know how messed up that is? That actual Reddit employees allegedly, of course, knew this was fake and yet still worked with people to make these fake screenshots and scenarios just so that they could report them to their higher-ups as facts, so they could remove these people that they didn't agree with ideologically from a website they're meant to be fair and just with when it comes to content moderation. So what does this mean for the future of any community that wants to prosper on Reddit? The answer is, well, it's simple. You're just not allowed to create a community on Reddit unless you adhere to the talking points and ideologies of the same people who aren't even in your community to begin with, which makes no sense. It just directly contradicts the point of having a community with its own identity if that same group of people are also not allowed to determine the identity or how their community should be governed in their own space. It would be like if I was taken away from this channel suddenly and then some random person was suddenly in control of it instead. That's literally what just happened to these guys, and no, it's not right. And again, the fact that I haven't seen a single website speaking about this besides Fandom Pulse, that speaks volumes. But I shouldn't be surprised really, since the access media is just as corrupted as it's always been. Reddit has pretty much just become a leftist extremist breeding chamber at this point, so the outcome of this is pretty on brand for that website. But it just saddens me how easily it happened and how powerless people were to stop it either way. But like I said, the media is very corrupted. Here's another example, maybe not Warhammer related, but even Thomas Mahler, the CEO of Moon Studios, which is currently making the game No Rest for the Wicked, has been at war with journalist types for years at this point because the media continues to smear his studio and game in a negative light because he doesn't subscribe to their belief structure either. Yeah, I know, not Warhammer related, but this story will reinforce what I've been talking about in this video, so it's important to understand either way. Thomas Mahler, like Horus Galaxy, has had their image and brand torn to shreds using disinformation and propaganda by these very same types. Mahler claims that Dean Takahashi, who's a games journalist who couldn't complete the Cuphead tutorial, you've probably seen that online somewhere at least once, and Dean's also the same guy who had the infamous Doom gameplay where he played like he had no hands, and Dean is also the same guy who even scored scored Mass Effect back in the day a very low score because he didn't know that he could level up his characters in the game. Yeah, that same Dean Takahashi, who's a games journalist by the way. He has been slandering Moon Studios for years, but here's what Thomas Mahler of Moon Studios said via Twitter about it recently. My point is, the main reason why Moon Studios has been soaked in controversy in recent years is because a quite corrupt journalist started a hate campaign against us by interviewing two people we laid off while making outrageous claims of us being Yahtzees, I can't even say these words, as SCX-ists, I guess, and, RAPIST-ists and all other kinds of stuff. For 12 years before that happened, you only heard positive things about Moon Studios, so quite convenient how we were suddenly portrayed as a scum of the earth. After that article dropped, people from the industry reached out to inform me that this article was penned in order to get unions into the games industry and that Dean Takahashi, that guy, literally takes money from any source and then sells his voice, and nobody in the industry seems to care about that. He's literally been doing this since the 90s, accepting book deals and other in-kind rewards to then write critically about this or that company. Mahler continues by saying, the funny thing is that everyone knows about this, but nobody dares to say it out loud. And why doesn't Dean Takahashi harm large companies in the same way? Because they're funding his annual summit and all that information is public, just do some research. And the reason why I'm showing you this is to prove to you how corrupted not only are websites like Reddit with Warhammer and more, but the general gaming news media is as well these days, because they refuse to speak on what Mahler says the same way they will never report on that Warhammer fan story losing their community to literal propagandists. But Mahler would follow this up by also saying this, calling more attention to this since literally nobody in the gaming press paid any attention to this, but all of them were quick to judge us back then and copy-pasted articles from this corrupt individual just so they could destroy our company and our livelihoods. Zero outreach from any journalist since I've posted this, a clear case of corruption. And yet these people still want to be called journalists because that title still holds a certain air of integrity. But I'm sorry, if you want to call yourself a journalist, you should probably act like one, which none of you folks have. Shame on you, so I appeal to all gamers out there, if you're still reading these outlets, just be aware of what they're doing. This isn't journalism. They're literally just trying to destroy the industry that we know and love. And that's really it. We've seen these websites before try and paint groups as problematic. They did it even with Warhammer 2 back in the day. How many articles exist right now where websites called Warhammer fans bigoted for not wanting female Adeptus Custodes? How many of those websites actually took the time to understand why and how this upsetted so many Warhammer fans? They just instead didn't care. The same way they won't tell you when entire community leaderships and identities evaporated overnight like it literally just never happened. Because to them, just like with Thomas Mahler and No Rest for the Wicked, if games like that fail to reach an audience the same way, if communities lose their control and sovereignty because they dare think differently than these media types which are all cut from the same cloth, it then begs the question that if places like IGN or PC Gamer, Kotaku, Games Radar, or Reddit even are all willingly able to report on real news but instead use their reach to just silence the pleas of both the communities and the developers in this medium, what hope do any of us have in the future? Maybe that's the point. It's to demoralize you. They want you scared. They don't want you to gather and become strong enough. After all, see how they treated Gamergate already when that happened. We were all labeled bigots and phobes and more simply because we wanted good games again and not the propaganda that they were selling. And any slight push against the miasma of gender identity and complete censorship is just met with resistance or name calling, or in the case of what happened with Horus Galaxy, they've literally created fake screenshots claiming that they said things that they didn't. And it was for not any other reason than to destroy you, your image, and hopefully someday even your livelihoods too. I can only imagine how many games journalists would love if I lost my channel, because if I did, they could continue to peddle their propaganda without someone of my size calling them out for blatantly lying all of the time. I guess where this brings me is, where does this leave both the integrity of gaming news media as well as these websites that were supposed to be neutral and allow people of different philosophies to speak openly? If only one viewpoint is allowed in, say, Warhammer's communities or game development, is that not a great example of why freedom of thought must be protected at all costs? But maybe that's the point, which is that you shouldn't be allowed to think freely, because if you do, you'll likely come to the realization that these websites, which market themselves as havens of free speech, are in fact actively working against you at every turn to ensure that your free speech is worthless than someone they agree with politically and ideologically 100% of the time. It's just gross to see, and I feel for the Horus Galaxy moderator moderators and the community especially too. Because it's not right that they had their online space get hijacked and morphed and destroyed by the very people that they were trying to get away from in the first place. And if anything, it tells you that it doesn't matter if you try to make your own community somewhere else, that these types will always try to find a way to slander, infiltrate, and destroy the spaces that you've spent so long cultivating simply because they don't want you to escape their politics or their madness anymore. As for Thomas Mahler, it's another example of how these media types will selectively report on things as long as it supports their narratives and their alone. They all reported on Thomas Mahler saying that his game isn't full of trans people because they didn't like that. But when he says that they're spreading misinformation, zero, silence, nothing. And I hope this video shows you how the battle for your favorite fandoms and franchises is far from over and to always stay diligent. This is not okay for them to do, and they know that. And despite that, they will continue to spread their corruption until you all have nowhere left to turn. As of now, Horus Galaxy is mostly just in their Discord server, but how long until the next Judas gets in there too, and then finds another way to destroy it as well? I guess time will tell. But I hope people now know what's going on, because you won't hear any of this from IGN or GameSpot for sure. You can count on that. But what do you think? Let me know. This sucks, man, but thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.